Go live. We'll just take a minute here to connect in.
We're good?
We're live.
Hi there. Welcome to TAAFI's live stream event. We're starting a little bit late here, but we're very excited to welcome our first live stream event here. It's a creators panel curated by Brandon Lane from Teletoon. This is in partnership with Canadian Animation Blog doing our live stream and Corus Entertainment. So I'm going to give it up for Mr. Brandon Lane, who came up with this idea over an empanada. So here it is, Mr. Brandon Lane.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Can you hear me? All good? Okay. Yeah, me and Barnabas eating an empanada, and we said we should put a panel together. What? No? Hello?
Is this working?
The mic's not working.
Can
Hello? Microphone?
Microphone.
Microphone?
Is this working? Oh, there we go. Do you want to use this one?
Is this one? Oh, there we go. So you've all gotten to see what 90% of our meetings are, is figuring out our Skype and microphones. Yeah, anyways, me and Barney were having an empanada the other day, and he said you should put a panel together, and then I did. These people are here to chat about their shows that they made. So we're here to talk about creator-driven shows, which is something that's been talked about in panels for the last couple of years, and I go to these panels, and the main point is we should make creator-driven shows, and I've always been in this audience being like, we are. Look at them, they're here. So I figured we'd put them together. So yeah, like Barney said, I work here for Teletoon, YTV, and Treehouse, and I'm the production executive on shows like Mysticons, Sprinkle and Sweet Sugar Magics, Wishfart, and Cupcake and Dinosaur, and then I used to work at 9 Story as their development executive, and I developed the 3 Amigonauts. So I'm the laziest panel host ever, and I just got the people on the shows that I work on, so I didn't have to do any research. But before we get started, I got something to say. So at Corus, we've been recently doing diversity reports on what's on screen and the gender parity of the people working behind the scenes. And so for the gender parity, we look at key creatives. So it's writers, producers, and directors. We're doing okay in writers and producers. On directors, we have 0% female directors. So I just want to toss it out there that maybe the next TAAFI talk could be like, why is this happening? Because we should talk about it. Because that's not good. But on to cheerier subjects. These guys created TV shows, and so we're going to talk to them about that. So what we're first going to do is just figure out who they were up to the point where they came up with this idea. So let's start with Leanne and Dan. Who are you, and also who's this John guy?
John got sick of us and went to Mexico. So Dan and I have been writing animation and story editing and show running for about 15 years at least. And John, our silent partner, who really is in Mexico, because we just finished production and he went on a trip, he was, well, still is, I guess, mostly a feature writer director. And so when we met John and decided to collaborate on something, it was really interesting that we were working with someone who's had no animation experience, but we really, we shared a lot of the same ideas, and we got really excited working together, and he kind of infused like what we were thinking about doing with like a new energy and a new life, because he was coming from a totally different world. So I think that was like really instrumental in how we formed Wishfart. And before that, I don't know. Actually, one of the people I went to communication studies at Concordia with is here, Dina Pino. And so before that, I was in communication studies, and I always wanted to be a writer. And then I met this guy working on student bodies. We were assistant directors, and because I'm going to keep blabbing.
And I'm Dan Williams. I'm one of the other creators of Wishfart. And yeah, Lee and I were working for a long time together. We met John. We were mostly working on live action stuff with him, kind of pitching primarily our own series. And at one point, I came up with an idea for like a CW type show about a super rich, like
well, we didn't know it was you wouldn't know it was leprechaun. Sort of like a Colin Farrell guy in a green suit who like gives you like all the money you want for anything you wish. And I pitched it to these guys, and John and Leanne were like, "That's really not a very good idea." And John was like, "You guys work in cartoons, like that's pretty much all you guys do. Why isn't it a cartoon?" And so we worked it together into a cartoon that ultimately became Wishfart.
And what is a Wishfart?
A wishfart is like a brain fart. It's like the first wish that you blurt out when you catch a leprechaun. Usually a bad idea, and it usually goes wrong. And so the show itself is about a guy named Des, who's a teenage leprechaun. He doesn't look like a leprechaun. And him and his best friends, a puffin and a ghost girl, they hang out together. Des grants wishes that go terribly wrong, and together they try to right the world.
Very accurate wish granting powers.
Yeah, he's not a very good leprechaun. He's like a rookie leprechaun. Our voice actor who does Des is here, by the way, sitting in the back there. That's Matt.
Hey.
Yeah, amazing.
Now that we're chatting Wishfart, we might as well check out the clip. Right, and I'm sorry to do this to you.
No, it's fine.
It broke our system, but that's fine. Yeah, we just jumped ahead, but yeah, let's roll the Wishfart clip.
Which one, jar opening or last wish?
Jar opening.
Okay, I'm just gonna see if I can pull this into the live stream, and then I'll run it.
The Pedro Reacts video.
Quick, before he wakes up.
This jam is jammed up, geeks.
Open infernal preserve.
Huh? Hey, what's all the racket? Des!
Dezo.
Jar giving you trouble, huh? Don't worry. Opening jars is kind of my thing.
Yeah, we know.
It's all in the technique. This jam brought to you by Des.
Thanks, Des.
You demand, Des. How about some shamrock jelly to go with your potato jam? No. It's too much trouble. This time we'll open it. Seriously, guys, I don't mind. I've already got the calluses.
Really, Des, we don't want to bother you anymore.
For once, I wish we could open the jar. You do? Someone took a one-way train to Bufftown.
Not one someone, two someones. Yeah.
Guys, don't just muscle it. Jar opening's all about the 3 T's. Technique, and...
Yes!
Oh, love that sound. My turn! Oh, Nanny! I have the power! Oh, that's cool.
Cool. Let's move on to Pedro. How's it going, Pedro?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey, so you're in Brazil, right?
Yeah, I'm in Rio.
Yeah.
I was gonna be here, but unfortunately I couldn't make it kind of last minute. So
That's okay.
sorry, guys.
So you're a Brazilian man. How did you get involved in Canada? What's your deal?
Yeah, so I'm a total outsider in the industry, I guess. I went to Vancouver Film School 10 years ago. Before that, I used to work in advertising, and it was sucking my soul dry. So I went to Vancouver Film School, studied animation there for a year. Went back to Brazil, started working for Birdo Studio, which back then was like a five people studio, very small. And we did mostly like advertising stuff. So there I was back in advertising again in some capacity. But it's always been a really great experience because you get to work with like so many different styles of animation and so many different styles of design. And every month you're doing something different. But I always wanted to do shows. Started like creating a bunch of pitches. And then we started off with the local Brazilian markets because we're there in like the swampy marshes of the industry. So we went to Rio Content Market, and that's where we met the good folks at E1. We got to pitch them Cupcake and Dino, which was one of the pitches I created. I'm sure we'll talk more about it later, but yeah, and that's kind of how it all started. It was a process that, as you guys know, take like several years to happen. And once the show got greenlit, a year to a few months later, I moved to Vancouver where the show's being animated, and that's where I am directing the show from. So it's kind of a big, messy production between Rio and Toronto and Vancouver, with a lot of stuff going back and forth in 3 time zones, but it's totally worth it.
Can you tell us a little bit about the show then? What is
okay. So yeah, the show is called Cupcake and Dino General Services. It is a show about 2 brothers. One is a cupcake, the other is a dinosaur, as the name says. And it was created kind of like I once got access to a royalty-free video website called Video Blocks, and I just downloaded like a bunch of videos from that site, and I started doodling some characters on top of the videos, and it was kind of naturally that I started animating these 2 characters, and one was a cupcake, the other was a dinosaur. I thought it was a good kind of juxtaposition if they both were together. And so the show was kind of inspired by that and kind of by my relationship with my sister. I have a younger sister she looks really cute and she looks really girly and tiny, but she's a firecracker and she's a really like kind of go-getter kind of person. So that's kind of what Cupcake is inspired by. And I'm a big oaf. So I guess that's kind of the dino side of things. And so yeah, but after the initial concept, and I thought general services was something that people would understand, and only later I found out that it's a term that doesn't make any sense in English. But E1 was awesome, and they totally decided to go with it and call the show General Services, which I guess has a nice ring to it. And there are 2 brothers who live. They live underneath their uncle's grocery store. And that's what they do. They do general services, which is pretty much anything they get hired to do in a place called Big City. And it's a very loose concept. But I mean, what's consistent about the show is that we love that the show has a big heart, and it's about family. It's about friendship and about these 2 guys who have a really kind of loving but weird relationship. I guess you guys have a clip there too?
Yeah, let's do the cupcake clip.
Okay. For episode 4?
I think so. That's the robot house. Yeah.
We've got Cupcake 1 and Cupcake 2. And unfortunately for these ones, we can't show them publicly, so only people in here get to see them. So we're gonna.
Yeah, whoever's streaming this can't watch this. So
yeah.
We're gonna go dark.
Not allowed.
We're going dark on this one. Did you want your first clip or second clip, Pedro?
You opened a clip earlier. It's not that one. It's the other one because I heard the music.
Okay.
Well, that was easy. Yeah, that wasn't so. Ow! Hang on! You got it! Like a boss. Wait, I feel different. Where's my headband? No, it's gone. Oh yeah, you're never getting that back. What am I gonna do? Me without my headband is like macaroni without the cheese. Just plain macaroni, Cupcake. Just plain unflavored macaroni. Don't even joke about that kind of thing. Sorry, Dino, but try not to worry about it too much. It's just a headband, and trust me, you won't even notice it's gone. Won't I notice? Diorama. Flowers. Hey, a puddle to leap over with merriment and glee. Ooh. Unicorn!
Normally I love a good hug, but you're a dinosaur!
So, unicorns, am I right? Don't you see? It's not him, it's me! My headband was a part of me. Or maybe it was me.
I know. Come on, buddy.
No, the old dino's gone. Forever. Oh, that headband. We did everything together. Yay! Headband.
Put me around your head, Tiger.
You sure?
Do it. Real nice.
Dino,
Your headband never had arms, or legs, or a mouth.
really? Could have sworn it had some of those. My headband!
I think that's it. There we go. Sweet. So let's move on to Kyle. How's it going, Kyle?
Good.
So are you at Nick right now?
No, I'm at home.
Okay, cool. But you're in LA.
I came home. I just thought it'd be easier that way.
Yeah, fair enough. Set up the business.
Yeah. Just want me to kind of talk about how it started.
Yeah, who are you and what's your show?
I'm Kyle Marshall, and I'm the creator of the Three Amigonauts, which was a show. It was in development. I don't know, Brandon, you might know better. I think it was like 2009 or something like that, or 2010.
Yeah, I think maybe 2010, 2011. Yeah, when we first started it.
Something like that. Yeah, and Tammy, it started off as a short film. At the time, I was working at Mercury Filmworks, just doing boards and character design and stuff. And then Tammy Samin, she seen the short, and we started talking. So she started to just take it around, and Nine Story optioned it, and so yeah, we were in development for a while. And then and then it got picked up. I had just moved out to LA here to work at Nick, and then 2 months later it got picked up. So it was kind of a crazy couple months. So.
Yeah, and so what's the show about?
Yeah, it just started out as a short film that then we thought, well, we just see if it had any legs. So tried to make a series out of it. So.
What happens in the show?
Sorry, you can't quite hear that. But
what's the show about, Kyle?
The Three Amigonauts, it's about three best friends that their dream is to become astronauts. And so they, by chance, they end up going to Space Academy for Kids. And there it's just kind of all about their adventures and them discovering about the universe and life and friendship and stuff. So it's just about these three friends trying to kind of get through life in the universe.
And so we've got a clip, so we're going to watch the opening, actually. Do you want to tell us how the opening came together?
Cool.
No? Okay, we'll just watch the opening.
Oh, sorry, you're kind of, it's a little muffled for me. I can't hear that.
Okay, sorry, Kyle. We're going to watch the opening. I'm just going to tell a story. So for the opening, Kyle really wanted a Kid Cudi vibe. And so Nine Story actually just went out and got Kid Cudi.
Sorry to cut you off. Kid Koala.
Kid Koala, sorry, Kid Koala. Sorry, I was off. Sorry, Kid Koala.
No, that's cool.
Yeah, so it's Kid Koala just actually did the theme song, which is great. So we're gonna watch that now. go. One of my favorite openings. So let's move on to Sean. So Sean is the creator of Mysticons. So what's your deal, Sean?
Well, I started out in the 90s. Thanks for that question. I feel so old now. But I worked on a lot of movies and television shows as a crew member. And then when I realized it was kind of like Pedro said, I went through a very soul-sucking experience because, I delivered a lot of sandwiches and snaked toilets and did all things that weren't related at all to film. And then so I was like, I gotta do something better than this, and went to the Film Center to become a writer. And I went through their primetime program in 2000 and met a bunch of great people there. And then I think I worked on a few live action shows. I did Degrassi. I think everybody in Canada works on Degrassi if you're a writer. And then my first, I'm happy to say, animation job, I think, was with you guys. Because you guys were doing Delilah and Julius, right? Back. So good we got you to do like 100 episodes. Well, it was funny because I was doing live action and things were drying up because tax credit situations. Oh yeah, the tax credit situation in 2000 was really bad. It still sounds ringing to me.
I'll just bring it down now.
So, yeah, what was the question?
You said you were on Delilah and Julius,
and
then
and so they called me to work on Delilah and Julius, and my agent called me and he said, how would you feel about going into animation? And I was like, yeah, that'd be pretty cool. What's the show? And they were like, oh, it's like a show about it's like James Bond but animated. And I was a huge James Bond fan, so I was like, let's do it. And so I just put together a bunch of pitches, and these guys loved it. And
yeah, he wrote like every single one of his pitches. He was like,
but it's only because I lucked out and it's James Bond. But and so yeah, I worked with them for on that show, and that kind of started the snowball. And yeah, I've been worked on various shows throughout. And then yeah, I did a lot of work with Alabama. Got into sort of the toyetic side of things. In 2008, I got hired.
Do you want to explain what?
Yeah, I should.
Toyetic means?
Yeah, it's insider lingo for toy show. No, but it was like I worked on like Battle Force 5 was a big first toy show for Nelvana, and then I got involved with Mattel and worked with them on Max Steel and a few other properties, and so they eventually called me to do a toy show here, and I pitched Mysticons, and it started from there.
Cool. And so what's Mysticons about?
It's a fantasy adventure show about 4 girls that come together and become legendary heroes. And again, I see a common theme. It's more about their friendship and how they all grow and come together over these crazy epic adventures. And it's based. It came out of my love for Dungeons and Dragons because I used to play that a lot, and it became a kind of focal point and when we were trying to break stories. So and Stephanie was on the show. That's why I'm looking at her. She worked as she's one of the best writers on Mysticons as well. So yeah,
cool. So I think we have a clip from Mysticons.
Yeah,
check it out now.
All right.
We need to get out of here now. Look out! Where are those astromancers? Bunch of ancient, useless morons. Sorry I'm late. Get down! Whoa! Thanks. I'm Princess Arcana.
I'm one of the ancient morons. Name's Malvaron.
at bay. Run, Arcana! Run!
No!
There we go. So finally, Steph. And so Steph's show is in development rather than production. But what's also interesting is Steph wrote on all of these shows except for Amigonauts.
Yeah.
And also does guest voices on Wishfart and Cupcake and Dinosaur. So she knows all these shows pretty well except for Amigonauts. So who are you, Steph?
What did I do? I went to school. I went to Ryerson for. Yeah, I was born. I went to radio and television arts at Ryerson, and I knew I wanted to be a writer then, so I took all the writing classes, and so that I'd have scripts, to give to an agent when I got out, which is what I did. And then meanwhile, I'm involved in the comedy community here, so I do stand up and improv, and so kind of blended those two things and managed to squeeze my way into writing rooms for adult live action half-hour comedies. And I started off doing that as a script coordinator, which is basically an assistant plus you have to get everybody the right script and get yelled at all the time. And so I did that for a few years, and then I also meanwhile did a web series too, so that was helpful in terms of getting jobs because you could be like, look at this, yeah, watch it, which is helpful. And then what ended up happening? Okay, so the web series was called Sexy Nerd Girl, so it had a nerdy sort of theme to it. I don't know why, but that's and then my agent was like. There's this show called Mysticons, and it's an animated show, and they're looking for nerdy women to write on it. And he's like, so I recommended you. And then, luckily I got to meet Sean, and then Sean gave me my first job in animation. And so, thank you. And then that kind of I figured out through writing with that, and then it kind of snowballed out and wrote on other animated shows like Doug's show, Bagel and Becky show, which was awesome, and so that kind of I just kept getting passed around to animated shows, and then I realized that I still like live action, but animation's way cooler and more fun.
Cool. And so your show, so it's interesting because we just entered the second phase of development. So your show, Sprinkle and the Sweet Sugar Magics, can you explain what it was, and then we can talk about what it is now?
Sure. Yeah. There's a lot of similarities still. So basically, what it was it's a show about a really shy girl who has pretty bad social anxiety, and to the point where she has a hard time speaking in public. And then one day she found this magical donut from outer space named Sprinkle, and she was on Earth to learn about Earth. And for some reason, Kara, the main girl, the shy girl, was the only person who could see her. So then they end up sort of becoming buddies, and Sprinkle's super outgoing and extroverted. So, and since nobody can see her, she would use her magic to sort of push Kara into all these situations where normally she'd be like, oh God, no, please, no. But then she had to do it, and she had to justify all the weird magical stuff happening around her. So it kind of forces her to become less shy.
Cool. And then so the show kind of got soft pitched internationally, and then we got some feedback, and so now it's changed slightly, or a little more slightly.
Yeah, it's well, okay. So what happened? So basically, internationally, the main feedback was that they didn't want to do a show about a donut because of sugar, and sugar's bad for kids, and even though I was like, she's not eating the donut's her friend.
But we also have Cupcake and Dinosaur.
I know, but so. Part of it was that it's a show about a girl main character, and
so there's some, I think, sexist feedback that we got that she was a girl with social anxiety, so she was having to eat her feelings, which I don't think a male character would have got that feedback at all.
Yeah, there's a lot of shows with Adventure Time and Steven Universe where there's donuts and candy and treats that are featured prominently, but for some reason, when you're a girl, it's bad messaging if there's sugar, junk food, anyways. So ultimately ended up having to change it, and I didn't want to just pivot and make her like a carrot or something. So I just changed it completely, and I tried to find something organic to what being shy is about. And I was thinking about like, oh, when you look down at the ground, you're looking at your shoes, and I was like, what if your shoes started talking to you? So now the show is called Run and Trip, and one of the shoes is named Run, and that's sort of like the really like energetic, extroverted one, and she's always trying to pull Kara into all these like situations. And then the other shoe is Trip, and that shoe is like a guy who's sort of like, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Like that seems risky. And so I was always trying to pull her the other way. So she's sort of caught between these two dueling things, which is actually like what's going on in her mind, like wanting to do stuff, but then being afraid.
Yeah, I like it. You like it?
Yeah, I'm actually really happy with the change. Like, I was saying to Brandon earlier, it's like it's a bit easier to explain now, and it feels clear to me because that's like what I go through. Like, I think we all do on a certain level, like want to do things, and then we're like, oh no, what if the worst thing possible happens? So I was like, it'd be a good way visually to show that internal struggle, but with her feet, and have really like cool like 80s sneakers.
Totally. So I want to move on to I want to move on to the pitch process because I got a lot of questions about how do you pitch? What's that like? And I think you have a pretty fun pitch, like your pitch with Athena. How did that go?
Oh, that was really great. That was so basically I had this idea, and then I went to Banff, which is the media festival in Banff, and it's really fun, and it's a really good place for pitching. And so I met with Athena. She was like my first meeting, I think, of the whole festival, and I pitched her that, and she was really interested. And then I just got to meet with a bunch of production companies.
So she said, we want this, find a company.
Yeah, exactly. Which was like, I was like, like it was like insane. And then I just got to meet with a bunch of different companies, and then ended up going. It was really tough to choose because there's a lot of great companies in Canada, but I ended up going with Radical Sheep, and and it was the best Banff ever. It was so much fun.
Do you have any advice for pitching?
Well, I'd say like if your story in general comes from a personal place, it makes it much easier to pitch because then you can just speak to what you know, and it doesn't matter what the dressing is. Like if the dressing is a space donut or shoes, it almost doesn't matter because that's all it is. It's dressing, like, and it's a vehicle for telling stories. But the real story is what's the nugget of truth that's inside it. It's easiest. That's the part that I find easiest to talk about and to express is the part about shyness because I've gone through it personally, like when I was a really painfully shy kid. So I think I'd say that latch on to what you find the most interesting about it and spare the details for later because like there'll be tons and tons of time to get into the details. But when you're doing the initial pitch, I'd say just talk about like the main nugget that's like the core of the idea and what gets you the most excited.
Cool, yeah, good advice. So Dan and Leanne, what was your pitch like? I haven't even heard this time.
What happened with us is we came up with the idea for the show. We weren't sure. We weren't sure if anyone would like it, so we kind of, soft pitched it around to everyone we knew. We went to because we've been working for a while, so we called everyone up, and it was really to gauge if there was any interest in it, and there was not. They weren't official pitches. No, we just sort of sent it to people we knew. If you have time, can you take a look?
That would be interested.
Yeah, and most people weren't interested. Primarily, I think that for who knows why, I guess I don't know. But they didn't like it, and they thought it didn't fit with what they wanted at the networks at the time. We were trying to age the show up a little bit more than younger, and everyone was saying it needs to be younger. And so we retooled it a little bit, made it younger. It ended up getting older again in the end, but we made it younger. We hired someone to do some art just so we had something to show people. Some people liked the art, some people didn't like the art. It's like it got to a point, I think, at one point where we were like, well, unless someone's giving us money, we're going to stop changing this thing because people change with the wind. The business is fickle. People don't know what they want from one day to the next. So at one point, we just sort of became very focused on what it is that we liked about the idea originally. And we also, in talking with lots of people, we also got really good at just telling the story of the pitch. There's three of us in a room, and we play off each other, and We practice like so. Our it was a lot of practice. Leanne's a big believer in like really figuring out what makes sense. We do our pitches like we do a school like oral presentation. We like walk in, we say what it is we're going to be talking about for the next 20 minutes, and then we go and follow through exactly with that. So there's no surprises. No one's like taken for a loop. Everyone's like very comfortable, and then we end, and then that's what we do.
I was going to add that what made it different for us about other pitching scenarios was like we decided let's just get a feel first, and that gave us a little bit of time. Like we probably worked on the initial pitch for about a year, and then when we didn't really get any sort of solid bites, like we got a lot of good feedback, we decided, well, the best thing we could do, because we just, like Dan said, we had some art, but it wasn't, ultimately what we were going to use. We decided that we were going to write some scripts. And I think that was what we did differently with this pitch that I would say, I mean, not everyone are, like some people who are creators are artists and not writers, but whatever it is that you do, I think like doing, putting your idea to the test by writing an actual episode or storyboarding an episode, whatever it might be, was for us really what led us to understand our show inside and out. And also then we went to Teletoon with scripts, and they ultimately, even though we had no art, they greenlit for development because of the scripts, and we'd worked on them so much. So I think in the end, like going to a pitch, like unless you are an amazing pitcher and you have something that's like everybody wants, I feel like going with a bigger example of what you do, like probably, So we hadn't ever done that before. We've always pitched with like a 2-page or, a general idea, but this was really more specific. So I think that was.
And then how long was your development? How was development?
So I was looking back through the emails today, so I couldn't remember a thing. So we created the show January 2012. We pitched Teletoon January 2013. We got our development deal January 2014. We went into production January 2016, and we're just delivering our last episode in French, I guess, January 2018.
So it's been 6 years.
6 years.
Okay.
Yeah. Development was 1 year from getting the.
Getting the green light was only a year, but 6 years of our life.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, some of my favorite meetings have been some very serious boardroom meetings talking about whether or not the show should be called Wishfart, and the debate of whether or not we should keep it or not. And so you guys had to fight to keep it, right?
Athena, I have to say, was such a huge champion of the show from the beginning, and it wouldn't have happened without her. And she was really like, a lot of times are like, maybe we should change the name. A lot of people are saying like Wishfart, it's like internationally people won't like it or whatever, but we always loved the title. And Athena was like, no, it has to be Wishfart. Like we're gonna make videos to like prove what. Like she was really into the title, and I think it was smart because there are always be people that don't like the title, but you remember it, and yeah, they're all bad. They're like they don't work. So
it's definitely memorable for sure. So let's move back to Pedro. So Pedro, what was your initial pitch? Did you pitch Birdo at first, and then they picked it up?
At this point, I was. It was probably like over 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and I had done a few pitches already. I had pitched. We'd pitched a show for. So I've been working for Birdo for 10 years. So it was probably around like my 4 or 5 year mark in the studio. So being a small studio is really intimate with the owners, and it was kind of like a small family. And so I had done some pitches before. I pitched the show in Cartoon Network Brazil. That's actually they're showing the episodes now in Brazil, which is a show called Oswaldo. But it's a very small show, very small scale, very few episodes. But it was a really good kind of training ground for doing pitches and stuff. And I had pitched some shows to Nickelodeon at that point, and then the idea for Cupcake and Dino came up. the first thing I had, even before I had the pitch, I had this weird mishmash video of that had like live action and animation kind of smushed together with the soundtrack by Skrillex, which is an artist like I really don't like, but I put there kind of ironically, and I think people didn't quite understand that. Anyways, uh, so yeah, I pitched it to Berto. They really liked the idea. We were about to go to the Rio Content Market that happens here in Rio every February, if I'm not mistaken. And there's usually some Canadian companies because of the co-production agreements between Brazil and Canada. So E1 was here, was one of the companies we pitched to. We didn't even pitch to the family department because it's a market that's just not it's not just for kids. They have all sorts of age contents. But they really liked it. They took it back to Toronto. They showed it to the E1 family guys, and and they called us like one day just out of the blue. They called us. They wanted to talk about it. They wanted to option it for a couple of years and develop it. And that's kind of when my relationship with E1 started. The show has changed quite a lot from the initial pitch, which was kind of like, I guess, like 12 pages long, and had a lot of weird pictures and weird images. And I remember that every time I kind of pitched them the show, I would, after the pitch, I would show the video, and people would go just like, "What the fuck is this? Like, why am I seeing this?" Because it didn't really explain anything about the show. But I don't know if it can cuss. I'm sorry.
It happened.
But but uh, but at least like it kind of showed the style of sort of weird humor, and it set the tone for the show, even though it didn't explain anything plot wise. I have the video. I can show it to you guys after. So then the show went to E1. Uh, they got the option, and the idea was always to do a co-production between Brazil and Canada because of all the agreements that are in place. And then they brought in Tristan, who's probably there in the audience today, and he's a creative producer in the show. And then they brought in Mark Satterthwaite, who's the head writer. And I was really lucky to meet these two guys and work on the show. And the show has changed quite a lot from the initial pitch. I guess the only thing that never ever changed about the show was Cupcake and Dino and their designs, because I guess that's kind of like they're at the heart of the show, and that's kind of like what makes the show the show. And we added the supermarket. We added the rest of the family. They have an uncle. They have a grandma. They have an assistant, and it just kind of the world just got expanded, and it was just like, for me, it was like a huge learning process, because coming from Brazil and had previously only working on like a very small show, and before that just doing completely different things like advertising and like super small content, for me was just like it's just like going to school every day. And I was really lucky to have Tristan and Mark, and they both became friends over the years. And then we did a promo for the show, which is like the 2.5-minute promo that already had the supermarket, already had most of the kind of the cast that ended up being the cast. It had a completely different voices, but it already had Mark writing the scripts, and we took the promo to MIPCOM in 2014, if I'm not mistaken. Give me a thumbs up, Tristan, if that's correct. Yeah, okay, 2014, and and there, like, I know E1 started talking to Teletoon. Teletoon was the first one to get on board for the show, and they've been awesome ever since. It's not because Brandon is listening, because they really have been awesome. And then Netflix joined too, and so the show is going to be on Teletoon in Canada, Netflix everywhere around the globe. And yeah, it just kind of took a huge life of its own, and I'm just really happy to I've been working with like amazing people, have taught me everything, and it's been mind-blowingly awesome, like coming from Rio, and now having a show that's gonna play around the world, and it's just been the most amazing ride.
That's great. Yeah. So my experience from the other side was I had seen because when I was at Nine Story, they had gone to the Rio conference as well, and so all I saw was the Bangarang video, and I was just saw it. I was like, I don't know what this is, but I want it. And so when it came around to Teletoon, we just jumped on it. We didn't know what it was, but we just knew there was something there. So how long were you in development, Pedro?
I'm sorry?
How long were you in development? How long?
How long was it in development?
Yes.
It was, I guess, for like 4 years with E1, and I guess with Teletoon for 2 or 3.
Okay, so you got 7 years. You got you guys beat. Cool. And then so moving on to Kyle. So we did at Nine Story, was it 2 demos, right? Can you hear me?
Yeah, it was a long process. Real quick though, can I just make sure when you're talking, just keep the mic close, because sometimes I'm not hearing.
Is this good?
It gets a little muffled, but I don't want to miss anything. Yeah, it was a crazy long development. I don't know, like 7 years at least, something like that. 7, maybe 8. I never pitched a show. I think Amigonauts was like one of the first things I ever pitched. And Tammy Sameen, she got it optioned at Nine Story, and then I started to work with you on it. Yeah, we made a demo in the beginning, and then it went through a few changes. The show was still 3 Amigonauts, but it used to be about them, just their adventures in space and stuff. And then a school got added, and then there's some character changes and stuff. But yeah, there's times when the development was weird. There were times when I just really didn't think anything was going to happen with it. I kind of gave up on it. Actually, right before it got sold to YTV, I thought it was done and my option agreement was almost up, and I thought it was over and I was just going to make some comics out of it. And then, like 2 months before the option was up, YTV came on and got interested, and then they optioned, or I guess then we went into development with YTV. No one really wanted the idea for like 6 years, and then they said there was too much space shows, or it was too similar to this or that, and then kind of out of nowhere, YTV came along, and we did. We developed for like, I don't know, a year and a half or something, I think, with YTV, and then we did a pilot, and then that pilot. I knew that I was moving down to work at Nickelodeon here, and so I was doing the pilot, and then I moved down, finished the pilot. I didn't really think it'd get picked up, just because it's pretty tough to sell something. And then I moved here, and 2 months later, it was picked up. So, but it was like everything happened really fast in the end. But it was 7 years of just kind of slow development, trying to figure out what the show was. And then when it happened really quick. So.
Yeah, it was actually at Nine Story, they had given up on it, and the option was running out, and we decided to do one last kick in the can, and we did that second demo, and it was that second demo, I think, like Leah was there when it got pitched. It was that second demo that I think you had a huge hand in the second demo, and that's what really got it picked up. So it was a lot of perseverance, for sure. So yeah.
Sorry, I didn't hear that last part.
A lot of perseverance on your part.
Oh, yeah. And then we got a good crew. Like when we got Terry McGurran, when YTV came in, they got Terry McGurran and Laurie Elliott to be the story editors, and then the show really started to kind of, I guess, find its legs when that happened, and then really started to take off.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll move on to Sean. So Sean, it's an interesting story. So Mysticons was originally 4 boys.
Yeah, so Melvano wanted to do like a card show for like a all-boys action show based on like cards, kind of like Pokemon, Digimon, all that kind of stuff. And I wasn't that enthused about doing that type of show. And Irene, who was here, and the executives at Toronto, they basically said, well, if you don't want to do that, I mean, what would be your dream show that you could do right now? And I was like, what? I was like, okay. And I just started saying, I want to do a fantasy show. Because when I first started this business, Thrones. And so I was like, and then I started talking about my Dungeons and Dragons adventures, and I think I got excited, and I think then they got excited.
Are you a dungeon master?
I was a dungeon master.
Be a good one.
And that's like a tribute training to be a writer. I was creating worlds, creating characters, telling stories from the age of 10, and I did so much of it. It was like just part of me. So I started telling those stories, and they were like, "Okay, do that," and I did, and they were like, "Okay, that's not going to work." So, and then we fine tuned it into like a voice acting show, and we did that for like 4 years. Kevin, the director, I think he's here. He was amazing. We struggled through that for 4 years, and we wrote like 12 episodes. Did a Leica
with the boys.
Alison Court was also the voice of the mentor. Stephanie was in the room; she was with us, and then it changed to an all-girls show because Nickelodeon came on board and they wanted to do an all-girls show, and I freaked out at first. Not because it was an all-girl show, but because the boys version was very personal to me. It was like based on myself and my friends, and there were a lot of inside jokes. But then I looked at my bank account and was like, I better change the show to an all-girls show because I got to feed my family, and so I did, and it's a far superior show. It's great. But the good thing about that was that like once Nickelodeon committed, they were like, change it to a girls show, you get 40 episodes, and so it was a no-brainer after 3 days of me crying. But and then it was like pedal to the metal after that. We just like went crazy and wrote 40 episodes.
Yeah. So how did development change? Because you can't just like swap the genders. You have to change the show.
Yeah. So I had a team of mainly all guys, and so I realized pretty quickly I better hire more women and make them, that'll help with the stories, because we didn't want it to just be swapping it, and we didn't want it to just be like there were a lot of other all girl action shows that were just girls with action. Like I wanted to hire women and work with women and hear their stories, and I think one of the things we talked about in the room was like I want you guys to kind of wanted the women to kind of tell the stories that they wanted to see when they were young girls. So we came from that point of view, and I would flesh in the D&D stuff. But yeah, there were some really great. It changed the model of episodes. That like I did a lot of voice action, so you would see the same kind of stories over and over. But I think just changing it to a girl's point of view and bringing on a lot of women writers, like we got to tell some really cool stories. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree. It's a superior show. And it's interesting because when I first started in the industry, a lot of people were saying don't make action shows at the time, and also don't make shows that feature girls as the leads.
That's right.
And then and this show is like one of my first shows it's both, and also one of my first shows that's been like a hit. So it's for those people.
Yeah, it was nice to write for 4 women, and all the other roles, like the rule was to try any guest characters would always be like a girl, unless for story reasons it had to be a boy. So we tried to bring in a lot of women voice actors, and but I think just coming from the perspective, like it was nice because when you did voice action shows, you'd always have like one girl in the group, and then she'd become like she couldn't be too funny or too dumb.
An overachieving buzzkill.
Yeah, and then she'd become nothing after a while. So, but having 4 unique girl heroes as part of the team, it opened up a lot of avenues for us. So.
It's been really awesome to see. Like the other day, we had a classroom come in and we asked them what shows they're watching, and the little girl said Mysticons, which is always cool.
Yeah, it's
always cool to see. So moving on to production. So we're talking about creator-driven shows. So what was your involvement in the show?
I was pretty involved. Yeah, I know. I was pretty busy with it, but I tried to focus on the writing. Matt Ferguson took over the girls' version of the show because Kevin went to Pipeline, but Matt came on board, and he was jumped in right with me from the beginning. So I had never worked with Matt before, which is interesting, but he was a very seasoned director, and the team, the same crew from Nelvana was there, so I knew like Don Gauthier, the art director. And Brad Combs, he's an amazing, designer, and so I trust those guys. They showed me everything, and I would look at it and go, awesome. There were very few times where I was like, there would be the nerdy things I would pick out. It'd be like, well, a Minotaur doesn't really look like that, and that's the picky stuff. But like, they pretty much got the show
in terms of like design and stuff like that. And yeah, I didn't. I tried not to poke my head into production too much. Like everything just looked good to me, so I was like, let's just keep writing. You guys keep doing your thing, and it's good.
Yeah, that was very much my experience on the writing side and the design side and everything. Because I walked in, like, I came on board like 14 episodes in. Yeah. I like rolled up my sleeves to come in and help, and then I was like, well, this is good.
Yeah. I mean, we did one thing that we did do is Matt was very involved in the writing room, and we wanted him there. And so the first 2 writing rooms, he was quite available, and it was good because we would pitch him stories and refine stories, and the way like we would really beat out stories. So it would be like every episode we'd know every single scene and every beat. But so when Matt went to his team, he'd know the script before it was pretty much written, and to me that streamlined things quite a bit. But then once Matt got really into the thick of production, like we had sort of long writing rooms of 2 or 3 weeks. He couldn't afford to be in the writing room that long, so it got a little trickier at that point. But having the director there in the beginning was great.
Yeah, he's a very like story focused director too, which is great.
He is. He's that really helped
for sure. So, and what's interesting about Mysticons is there's a lot of notes on this show because there's Nickelodeon and also toy company notes, and then very minimal notes from me.
Seemingly, yeah. I mean, there's the potential for lots of notes, but honestly, this was the show with the least number of notes in my entire career. Like, I have to say, and I'm not just saying this because Tracy, my producer, is here, but it was honestly a really it was working on all levels. Like the director, the producers, like supported the show. Networks were great. Nickelodeon, I hadn't worked with them before, but like our executive there was amazing, and so. The most notes would come from Nickelodeon, and the toy company would usually give us no notes, if I remember right. Yeah. No, it was very, very minimal notes from the toy company, which is unheard of. Like I worked a lot with Mattel, and they're the opposite. They give you a lot of notes. They give the director a lot of notes in terms of what the design should look like, so they're a little more micromanagey that way. But Playmates was pretty hands off. They just told us come up with good stories.
Well, so was Nelvana kind of told you what kind of show do you want to make, and do you feel like you got to make it?
Yes, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's I feel like we did 40 episodes, and I'm just amazed with what we got away with. It feels like I got away with something because it came out almost exactly as I had hoped.
That's great. Yeah, I want to know what happens next. So Steph, you're still in development, but the development process you're really driving because you're writing all the scripts, right? Mm-hmm. And so you feel like you get to drive the process.
Yeah, it's been like everyone's just been so open. Like I haven't had. Yeah, it's just been really fun. Like you're super easy to work with, and like I want to pick your brain, and then like Michelle and the people at Radical Sheep, Shalene, they're like. I feel really lucky. I don't want to jinx it. But yeah, like, because writing sometimes, you feel like you're if you're writing by yourself, it can feel like you're in a vacuum and you're like, I don't know what's good anymore. And there's nobody like I can talk to about it because, you're just reading your own thing. Like you don't have you don't have anyone to bounce stuff off of or like, I forced my husband to listen to read it and try out jokes on him. But like, but yeah, it's been like I'm so glad I'm working with people who I like trust your ideas and I trust your joke sensibilities. So it makes it a lot easier. I don't feel like I'm just at home. Well, I mean, I am literally at home alone in my pajamas, but it doesn't feel that way.
And how about with the designs? Like, are you heavily involved in the designs in terms of feedback?
Well, I mean, I definitely give a bit of feedback, but Steph Ramon is doing the designs, and she's just so gifted. I want to leave it up to her because she knows more. Yeah, she literally is. I just met with her yesterday, and she's got so many great ideas, and I don't want to like micromanage her at all. Like I just want to see what she does. I trust her vision, and she obviously has like a ton more experience with storyboards, and because I have none, and she has so much, and so like I just want to know, like she'll know how to do the designs in a way that will be able to move and be able to like especially with we were talking. This was a concern with Run and Trip is because the shoes, like otherwise it'll be like shots of Kara's face and then shots of her shoes and then shots of her face and shots of her shoes. So it's like Steph is trying to think of ways to get them in the same shot, like ways to redesign the character so that the shoes are big enough and the character is short enough that they could maybe be in the same, like framed up in the same shot, or that the shoes can like come off her feet and sort of hover by her head so she can talk to them, so that, or like she can bend down and get them in the shot that way. So she's got like yeah, her brain is on this, so I'm happy. I trust her.
That's great, and I assume like if when the show goes, like you would be the story editor as well. I mean, I would fight for you to be the story editor as well, so we get to be.
I would fight for that too.
There we go. We'll make the decision. So Dan and Leanne on Wishfart, you guys are really showrunning the show. You and John as well.
Yes.
So like, what is that? What all did you guys do on the show?
Well, we ended up in a pretty super lucky position when we got the development deal. We didn't have another company. We weren't working with another company. It was just us. And we kept telling John, who'd never really worked in animation, he said, if the show ever goes anywhere, they're gonna make us like team up with a production company to do the thing. And that kind of never really happened in the end. Like we were like, even when we were getting the green light, we were like, so who's producing it? It's like, it's us. Like we were the team, we were the company. So and Nelvana, we had a whole team of amazing people at Nelvana doing the studio work. But so the sort of the day-to-day production stuff from Wishfart Productions was all done by us. So it goes through everything. Like we worked on all the scripts together with the amazing writing team. And then day-to-day production stuff, like going through designs and stuff, and approvals and notes, and and then also like even like signing the checks and stuff. We were like, it was like we had like our shop.
It was a good thing that we were 3 people, because we really, like, Dan was the lead producer, and then we have an incredible team here of artists and producers, and we felt fairly confident that we could do it, because we'd been in that animation world for so long and had seen and kind of been part of all the different processes before. But it was literally like winning. It's more than winning the lottery. It's like a dream come true to be able to take these stories that we really cared about and see them from literally like from the very first, like, how do you design this character, all the way to like the voice records were some of my favorite phase of the whole thing. Just seeing the actors bringing the characters to life and making them so much better than what we'd written, all the way to like the final mixes. So it was, for us, it was like, usually as writers, you put your heart into this thing, and then you give it over, and really talented people take it on and make it into something else, and that's amazing. But sometimes it feels like, we just really wanted the vision of our show to be consistent from beginning to end, and I think that's such a luxury, and it was such a dream for us to be able to do that. But yeah, just we had our hands in every aspect of it, and it was amazing.
22-minute episodes into 11-minute episode screeners that I can give people, because we don't have anyone working for us to do that stuff. So that's what we do.
Yeah, you guys are also running the social media now, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, because we already premiered in England, so and in Italy as well. We're starting a few other places. So we need some social media. So we're doing some social media to hopefully get people watching the show.
I just wanted to add too that it was one of the funny thing about production for us was like, so we came in here and we had these designs and we had these scripts, but then we have our Nelvana super team that actually made the things. We don't know how to do any of that, obviously. None of us can even draw. So, but it was so, like, I think for all of us, it was a great experience, because we just came in and we said, like, this is what the show basically looks like. We had a demo, but it's funny because we watched the demo the other day that we'd originally made, and the show we have is so much better. Like the characters are so much more alive, and all of it just really works. And I think that we just got so lucky that we had people who were like, yeah, okay, we want to. So we came in, and they could have just been like, oh, you guys are just writer creators, like, what do you know? But they really, I feel like they really trusted us, and they let us, like, yeah, and everyone had great ways to make it better, and it just so speaks to obviously the collaborative nature of this. I think if you're creating something, you have to really stick true to your vision, but then at the same time, like, accept and embrace that it's going to be a really collaborative thing that is going to change.
Yeah, so
as
yeah,
you
you
go.
guys coming from the writing side, like, so how do you establish, like, I guess the relationship with Jason, the director, like, how do you navigate that? He's here. He's here.
Was here.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, Jason was great. He was so great because he's such a seasoned director. He's so good at what he does, and he knows everything. And so he was able to. I feel like he really handled us well in that he was like, "Look, I really want you guys to make the show you want to make. You created the show," and he was so. He embraced that, and he just made it happen. At the same time, he was like, "Okay, you guys are crazy. You can't do that." And he was really like the guiding force, and we just
Like, during the scripting stage, we'd often have questions. We had ideas for a variety of different episodes, and we'd be like, "Well, is this something we can do given the time frame we're working in and given the technology we have?" And he would normally be like, "Yep, we can do it," and he did. They did. It's pretty amazing.
Actually, it's a funny example because sometimes he would be like, "You guys, that's gonna look so shitty. That's crazy. Like, you can't." Like, we want to do this episode where, and it's your episode actually, where this comic book shop turns into a chicken. Like, it grows chicken legs and it stands up and it walks around the town, and they have to wrangle this building. Anyway, Jason was like, "It's gonna look really bad," and we were like, "No, it's okay. It's okay." And he was. He's a perfectionist. He's a visual guy, and in the end, I actually think it looks really hilarious and better than what I thought it was going to look. So he was always. It was a really good, give and take of getting very kind of honest, like, and very experienced, feedback all the time, but also being supported. So I think that's part of the thing about a creator-driven show. I think is that the creator needs to be supported and surrounded by people that make the show even better, but that the vision has to be from the beginning to the end overseen by the original person. I really think that's the way to do a unique show.
Yeah, I agree. For sure. So moving over to the animation guys, Kyle, so you mentioned that you were at Nickelodeon by the time you got greenlit, so you weren't able to be probably as involved as you hoped to be, but what was your involvement in the show in production?
For production, it was more because I wanted obviously as much involvement as I could. Just my wife and I had just moved here, so we weren't really gonna kind of go back after making that move. And so we hired. One of the first things we did was hired Mike Geiger as the director, and that was huge. I was asked who would I want to direct it, and I said Mike Geiger, and he did an incredible job because we're friends. We kind of know kind of cartoons that we're kind of on the same page for that. And then so from there, I would come down we had, I don't know, maybe six or seven writer summits. And one of the keys, I think someone else said this before, having the director in the room was huge. Some shows I had worked on in the past, they didn't have the director, and so I directed on shows in Canada where you would get stuff, you'd get scripts sent to you, and then after everything is approved, you realize, well, we can't really do this. And it was really good to have Mike there, and also with myself, I had been in production before, so we could all kind of work together to make stories that were, we could try and do what we wanted with the stories, but also make sure that we were able to do it with the budget and time. So we did the summits, and then when it came to boards and animatics, I would get those sent my way for character designs and everything. I did the main turnaround and design for the main characters, and then from there, Francis Ye, he came in and he did it for the rest of the show. So I kind of set the style for the show, and then they kind of ran with it. Same with the boards. I did the first couple boards just to kind of set an example for the style of show I want, like kind of how I wanted to cut, how I wanted to look visually. And then, so I tried to get in the beginning as much as possible. And then from there, for the 2 years, it was just kind of, I wouldn't recommend anyone to do this, but I would work at Nickelodeon during the day. And then at night, I would come home and there'd be a bunch of stuff waiting for me on Amigonauts to go through, either storyboards or scripts, design, color, all that kind of stuff. So for about a year and a half, 2 years, that's kind of how it worked. And then my evenings and weekends were for the Amigonauts. So I just have a really incredible, supportive wife who let me kind of spend all my time on the two shows. And So yeah, so it's kind of a crazy production.
Yeah, for sure. So do you feel, even though you weren't getting to be on the ground, do you feel like the show in the end was kind of what you were envisioning, or what do you think?
I think there's aspects of it that definitely, like, I think that there's episodes, like, to be honest, there's episodes that I absolutely love that I'm really proud of that we made, and then there's other ones that I'm not proud of and I don't want to see again. It was definitely a learning experience in the beginning when we're trying to find what the show was, and I found that I think in the beginning we're trying to figure out what creator driven meant, and I'll give a lot of credit to Terry and Lori because they were our story editors. They were brought on into development, and there wasn't a lot of communication between them and myself. I think the idea was originally that they would be the showrunners, and they would kind of guide the show. And then we started to talk, and Matt Sheppo at YTV and Natalie Dumoulin at Nine Story, they really wanted me involved more. And so I kind of had a different idea of what I wanted to do with the Amigonauts at first, and how I wanted to kind of tell those stories. And Terry and Lori, they did kind of a 180, and they followed along. And Mike was kind of on the same page too, and they did an incredible job. I think it took us a couple scripts to kind of find what the show was, and then when we all kind of got on board, I think things really started to take off. They did a great job of getting the writers and everyone to kind of follow this vision for the stories that we wanted to tell.
Cool. So moving on to Pedro. So you're directing. You're on the floor directing on your own show. So how's that process working? Like, do you beyond directing, like what all do you do on Cupcake and Dinosaur?
I didn't get the last part of the question.
Oh, just tell us what you do on Cupcake.
Oh, okay. So I am the director. I did most of the main designs for the show, and I'm an executive producer in the show too. So yeah, production was. I mean, it's being like right now we're like in the eye of the storm at this point. We just all came from like an 8-hour recording session today, which was the last one. So we're really happy. So yeah, the show's being done in 3 different countries. So scripts and voice recording, and also the associate director of the show, Blaine Burnside, who's there in the audience too today. They're all being done in Toronto. Designs, layouts, what else? One of the board artists, and that's being done in Brazil. And animation, post production, compositing, post, that's being done in Vancouver, and also most of the storyboards. And music is being done in Toronto by Badtrex, and recordings by Wanted. So yeah, so it's a big kind of crazy puzzle that we have to put together every single day. And I started working from Sao Paulo because it kind of made sense during the pre-production part that, since I was doing a lot of the character designs, so I was based in Sao Paulo doing that and coordinating the team and kind of putting a team together. Then when the actual animation started, I moved to Vancouver 6 months ago at Atomic Cartoons, and now I'm working from there, and eventually I'll go to Toronto and meet the guys at U1. Always fun to go to Toronto, and yeah, I guess the creator-driven aspect of the production is I know that U1 from the beginning they wanted this show to be a creator-driven show, and they wanted me on board, and they wanted Berto on board of the show, and so it was really exciting to me to know that that I would be involved throughout the production, and I think what makes a show creator driven versus I guess the opposite would be, I don't like to say producer driven, but like I guess created by committee, is that I think creator driven shows have an idea that excites at least one person, which is the creator, and but if that idea excites you, that excitement, I think it's contagious, and people who share the same point of view as you, they'll be excited by the same idea. So I guess during the process, creator driven kind of becomes creators driven in the plural, because the people see themselves and they find their own angle into the show, and they kind of become, they become co-creators with you. And, like a lot of the people I've met during this process are, brilliant artists and brilliant producers who, uh, they brought stuff that I could never, never, and ever imagine, or I could never execute in like a million years, because I'm just one person. And so I feel like running a show, it's like a lot of you guys said, it's allowing the show to grow. Of course, you're guiding it, and you're like, you're giving the final word on things, and making sure that things are consistent. And well, you have that you add stuff to the show that you would never imagine. And Cup and Dino specifically has a kind of, I feel like it has kind of a looseness to it, from the concept to the show style. And that looseness allows for some experimentation, and it allows for people to bring different things. So I feel like we have sometimes we have very different episodes depending on who's doing the boards, for example, or who's writing the scripts. And like a good example of how like the show will grow a lot is like, we brought Mark Satterthwaite to be the story editor. And like I at first, like in the first like couple of months, I know like we butted heads, for example, but then we found the stuff that excited both of us, and we kind of became super good friends after that, and it was such a smooth process. And he brought in, for example, a lot of like amazing good writers from the Toronto comedy scene, including Stephanie, who's there, who like brought so much to the show and so much to the voice acting, to the point that when we're doing the first writers room, one of the writers in the show, Mark Litto, who's one of the most brilliant people I've ever came across, and it's a comic genius. He was doing the Dino voice in the meetings, and he wasn't a voice actor, and he wasn't doing the voice you know, wasn't playing Dino voice, but do Dino as
Sorry,
well
Pedro,
as Mark.
you cut out there.
And
Sorry.
he
Pedro?
Sorry?
Sorry, you cut out in the middle of your Mark Little speech. Could you just back up a bit?
I didn't understand what he said.
Oh, sorry. You were cutting out a little bit during the Mark Little speech. Could you just talk about how
Okay.
genius he is?
Yeah, so Mark Little is one of the writers in the show. He came to the very first writer's room, and he was doing just as we were talking about stories, and we could never get over that Dino voice. It was just perfect, and he brought so much life to the character, and he completely shaped the character as he is now. And so, of course, we had to bring him into it. It was something. It was quite. It was. It, for a lot of the producers, it was quite. It was a little bit of a bet, because he wasn't like a proven voice actor, but it was the best decision we made in the show. Like no doubt about it. So yeah, so this has been the production process from the beginning. It has this sort of looseness to it, I think. I don't think I'm a micromanager, even though Tristan might laugh out loud from the audience. So the idea is to allow people to bring stuff in, like the guys who are doing the music. They just brought like amazing stuff to the table, and it's been that since the beginning. And I feel like people are really excited to pitch in the show and make the show theirs a little bit too. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I totally agree. Mark Little to me was always the voice of Dino once he started talking.
Yeah, no,
for sure.
Once you hear it, you can't unhear it.
For sure. So Steph, I just want to ask, because you've written on a lot of these shows and you've written on other types of shows too. Do you find as a writer there's a difference between writing on something that's kind of driven by something really passionate about the creation, or something maybe is a bit more like a committee kind of put it together?
I mean, it's easier to write on a show that's where it's really. I don't know, Brandon. That's a tough question. Like, it's hard to tell. I mean, it's easier once you get to a point. There's got to be a point when the show kind of clicks for you, when you get it, and then things start to flow. Like, even the first few episodes you write for a show can sometimes chug a bit, where you're like, I don't know if this is right. It takes longer to write the outline. It takes longer to write the the script. But then there's some shows where you just click, and it helps, like it helps when you get material where you read it and you're like, oh, I get it, and the voice is so clear, and it's jumping off the page, like it's like there's a lot of fun like to be had, and you just want to dive in and play with it, and then it feels like, you know, somebody's handing you a toy to play with, and you're like, yeah, I can't wait to like do my version of this. But whether it's like a creator driven show or not, I don't know. I don't know if I've worked on shows that weren't creator driven.
Yeah, maybe that's true.
So I don't. I mean, these are most of the shows I've worked on. So I don't know. Yeah, it's. I mean, it comes down to working for like a really good story editor too, like somebody who's like easy to work with, who makes it really clear. Like you get as a writer, you get sent the materials, like the scripts to read, and the sort of writer's package, the Bible, and some of them are like just so super clear that you're just like, I get it. So and those are hard documents to write, because it's so easy to make the wordiest, most boring document you've ever read, and it's hard to make it a show jump off the page when it's just in paragraph form.
Yeah, that's fair. What are we doing for time, Barney?
Brandon.
Want to add something?
Yeah, Brandon, can I just add something that kind of goes back to what Pedro was saying and a bit of what Stephanie was saying? I think the big thing with like making a successful creator-driven show, especially if you work on, like say with Pedro and I, we come from the animation side of things, not the writing. I wrote a few scripts, but that wasn't my background. My background came from production side. And I think I worked on a lot of shows that the writing staff and the production were two complete separate things that they didn't really connect. And I think really making creator-driven a success in Canada is making sure that the two come together. I especially see that now, like being at Nickelodeon, as an example, like the creators on our show, Loud House, the writers and the board artists and the directors, everybody they're 5 feet away from each other, and they always have a connection, and we can always be building on the story. And I think that's always a really big thing, and especially in development, making sure that the creators get to pick their crew of people that they want to work with. And I know a lot of times in the past that wasn't the case. And so when they're trying to do creator-driven, the creator-driven wasn't really working properly, because the creator wasn't really in that room the way they should be, and kind of having and bringing the production and the writing together. But I think it's happening more. Like it sounds like it's happening more. I know on our show it did, and it's getting better. But I think that's definitely a key.
Yeah, we're trying. We're trying to get there for sure.
Things always do move a bit slow, like Sean was saying, when the director's in the room too, because they can right away say if something's going to work or not visually, so that saves a lot of time and notes later, it seems too, and also brings a lot to the table in terms of like adding jokes and visual storytelling, because as writers you can sometimes get a bit in your head about the cleverness of a joke on the page when it's not even necessary. You can just show it visually, so it does help a lot with having the director in the room.
Yeah, did anyone have anything else to add to that? I was going to maybe open up the questions from the audience. Are we good? How are we doing for time? Legit, okay. Yeah, well, it feels like question time if anyone has any questions. Yeah.
Hi. So I've always wanted to make my own show, and I've had a couple of ideas bouncing around, and obviously you need to find the right outlet and to meet the right people and all that kind of stuff. But just going into the pitch itself, do you think coming in with boards done, scripts done, all that kind of stuff is more valuable to get the thing sold over coming in with a more general idea where they can put their own visuals on it and say, oh, okay, we see this going somewhere, and but we want to have some input on it, rather than your designs and your stuff kind of paving the way for that?
I would say having done both with Wishfart, having gone in with art to some pitches and without in other pitches, and also having pitched a lot. I think I guess you just have to bring in what it is you feel really strongly about. Don't bring in. I wouldn't bring something that wasn't what I expected the show to be like afterwards. So that's kind of why we dropped the art in the end, because really what we're selling and what we were in love with was the concept of the show, and then ultimately some scripts, because we knew those. We knew we could do a proof of concept by the script alone. We knew we could write a script that would really say what the show was to anyone who read it. And so I would say that if you're going to go pitch anything, I would be as brief as you can always, because no one wants to hear too much. And then also move forward with your strongest foot. So if that is storyboards or if that's art, then go with that. If it's storytelling, then go with storytelling. But I would say almost anything. I mean, Brandon's probably heard more pitches than anyone here. But
yeah, for sure. I take pictures all the time, and I would say, it is whatever you do best, like whatever's going to communicate your concept the best. If you're a writer, do the scripts. If you do designs, do the designs. But if you're not a designer, don't do designs, because people are just going to picture that on the screen and be like, that doesn't look good. I think it's really whatever conveys the concept that you're trying to, and the themes and the characters that you're trying to get across. That's going to be what's best. Because do what you do best, I would say.
If they're supposed to bring the documents and the stuff with them to the pitch meeting, I kind of thought you send it after, but what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I always say come in, do the pitch, and then if someone gives you feedback and the feedback is something that you agree with, maybe don't leave behind it and then go back and make the change, and then send it from afterwards, because then it shows that you can collaborate and you're open to it. And if it's something that you don't want to do, then don't do it. But I would say also I would also say just a practical thing. If you go into a pitch and you hand out something at the start of the pitch, I'm just going to be reading it the whole time, like half paying attention to you. So I would say, wait till the end. If everything's still kind of the same, hand it off at the end. But like me and Leah, we don't really we don't read it on the paper. We do it through like digital. So usually if you leave something behind, we'll both be like, can you send this digitally to us? Can you also send this digitally? So then that's a leave behind anyways, like afterwards. So.
With some of our pitches, we started doing what do you call them? Like a lookbook for the show, like other shows, like Touchstones. Like you're saying, if you have something to look at, you're going to look at it, which can be a benefit or a negative thing. So sometimes we're like, they don't necessarily want to look at our faces for half an hour, 45 minutes. If they had something to look at, it might be useful. So, but we never bring the thing that we don't bring the thing it's going to be. We actually just bring like art from something, like things that inspired us during the process of developing the show. So mood board, exactly, like a mood board. Exactly.
Yeah, we've seen more and more like mood demos too, where it's just like if people can't put together a demo on their own because it's so expensive, but they do put together they cut together something from something else that's like a mood demo. And that helps. Like it's good to be it helps, sure. I mean, you never know. Like we've taken pitches that had no visuals and we put them in development. So sometimes there's like one picture that has something interesting about it and you put that in it. Like you never know. It's just something there grabs you. And you never know. Like if we knew exactly what we wanted, we would just kind of do it ourselves. So we're waiting for something to kind of inspire us. So it's kind of whatever's going to trigger that. It comes from wherever, Yeah, it's hard to like just prescribe. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, can I add something real quick? No, it's just I don't know. It might be totally wrong because this is stuff like picked up like bits and pieces over time. Like I remember like the very first pitch that I got my hands on was My Life as a Teenage Robot, was something that one of the people in the studio brought in. And I was like, oh my god, look, it's a real pitch. And I guess I've been doing kind of the same template ever since, which is kind of a like a 10-12 page PDF, and all of that's to say that I agree with everyone when they say like do what you do best, but don't come with like a million pages of things like you're the Unabomber. Just be passionate about your pitch, and know what your idea is, know what age group you're talking to, and be the expert in your show. But you don't need to bring a million things, because you need to be able to, if it's a good idea, it's an idea that connects with people and that's like very quickly. So I've seen people who work in animation in Brazil, and they're like, oh, we made like a 22-minute promo for our show. And I'm like, no, don't do this, because now you're too attached. Like you're not gonna be flexible to changing anything in your show, because you've already put in like a million hours into this thing, and it's never gonna change. So yeah, I guess be concise.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I'd also add to that, like you can focus on the materials all you want, but it's also pitching yourself. Like if we're looking for creator-driven shows, we need to get to know you. And so like the verbal pitch, like I always advocate for coming in and pitching verbally rather than just like there's something very Canadian about just sending a little pitch and being like, take a look when you can. But like coming in and talking to us, getting to know you, and it's like, and your first pitch probably won't work. Like it's a first date. No one gets married on the first date, but we get to know you and we give you feedback and you get to know kind of like what we're looking for, and eventually we'll get there. But yeah, it's really also about just like getting to know. It's a conversation rather than a presentation.
Yeah,
so.
it's a business of relationships, right?
Yeah.
So we work with each other for years on a project. So more, I think as I become more experienced, my feeling has been take as many meetings as you can, talk to as many people as you can, tell as many people as you can your idea, get to know people, because that's where it really is. People want to work with you as much as they want to work with your idea.
It's true. I want to just add that that is what we did differently with Wishfart than what we had always been doing before, which was obviously wrong, was that we really had a lot of conversations with people and we weren't afraid to and kind of, like what Pedro was saying too, we just had a concise idea and we just said, what do you think about this? And we just sort of talked about it to people and we weren't too bogged down and we just tried to not be too neurotic about it and not be too, proprietary. We're just this is what we're thinking of. What do you sort of informal and talk to literally all the producers that we knew. And it was so valuable to do it that way, I think.
Yeah, and it's hard to prescribe like a paint by numbers too, because if someone had described to me what Pedro was doing with Cupcake and Dinosaur, I would have been like, no, that's not a good idea. But then when I watched it, I fell in love with it. So I wouldn't have predicted that, but there was something about it that just got me. It didn't tell you what the show was about. It was just a Cupcake and a Dinosaur set to Bangarang. I actually liked the song at the time, and the visuals were great. So
Pedro hated it.
Pedro hated it. I didn't know. See, he meant it to be ironic, but I fell in love with it. So you never know.
I think a good thing. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Pedro. Go.
No, I was just saying I like the video. I just didn't like the song.
I like this video and the song. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say that, also as if you're coming at it as a writer, pitching is also a good way to meet people, meet different production companies. It is, well, yeah, get out of your house for sure, but also meet people, going to festivals and pitching, or just going into different. They'll always listen to you. If you just send a message, yeah, be especially. Don't corner them. Don't do that. I've heard horror stories about that. But yeah, no, but if you want to go into production company and pitch, it's a really good way to meet people, and then you might not get that show made, but at least they'll get to know you, and then maybe you'll get another job as a freelance writer, and then it helps to have as a writer to have as many credits as you can to get taken seriously to get your show bought, your own show.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know and pitching is a very nerve-wracking thing, but just keep in mind that the person you're pitching wants you to succeed because they want your show to be great and they want you to be the person. So it's like whenever I take a pitch from someone who's kind of nervous, this is kind of endearing to me, and I try to bring them along and help them with it. So I'd rather have that than someone who's really producer-y, who's I'm going to sell you this thing. So I'd rather do that. So they want you to win. They want you to win because you win, they win.
Can I add one thing, Brandon?
What's that?
I just want to add one thing too, just about I would say just do a lot of pitching too. It's about reps. Go and like you say, your first couple ones are probably gonna fail miserably. I still have horrible pitches. I still pitch around. But sometimes your worst pitch, I had one a couple months ago and I thought I completely bombed it and I had to reevaluate my whole life, and then I ended up with a development deal. And so you just gotta keep you never know what's going to happen, so just keep pitching, and you're also going to find what works in a pitch and what doesn't. Because if you just kind of sit there and you're scared to pitch, hoping that maybe one day I'll have the right idea, but you just got to go and do it.
Yeah, it's to add to what you're saying. I think when you pitch, it's so clear the parts of the show that are not working are the ones that you stumble through in the pitch, are the ones that you're there's this character, it's just kill it. That's how you finesse your pitch. You just have to do it over and over again. And pitching, honestly, is the most fun part. Production is terrible. Pitching is the most fun.
Yeah, you'll find holes quick. When you, even on an elevator pitch, or if you're going through your pitch, you'll know if your characters aren't working, or if your show doesn't have a hook, or you'll find holes real quick the more you pitch.
The moment you say it out loud for the first time, you're it seems so
good in my room. But now that I'm out talking to someone, like, I know this is terrible. This is terrible. I'll get to it. I'll get to the end, but we'll have to rework that later.
There we go. Any other questions?
Hello. Thank you for the talk. I wanted to say that. We've been talking a lot about getting the show picked up and pitching and everything, but I kind of wanted to ask about the production. So a lot of you have talked about things that you've had to change through the production, like for Mysticons, had to change almost the entire show, basically, the shoes and the donut situation. So I was just wondering about how much power you have as a creator once you get into production, and like how much power you have to execute your vision the way that you see it. I know that you have to work with people in the process, and they add to the production and everything that they have. It goes into it also, but for you as a creator, how much power do you have to execute your vision, and also is there a line that you won't cross in like changes that are being asked?
Yeah. I think you just have, as a creator, you have to know what your show is, and I think you have to stay true to that. And it's a very sort of weird, amorphous kind of way of describing it. But like for me, contractually, I don't think I had any power. But I think I work well with people. I work with the director, and I'm fairly convincing of things, and I can say, you know, I think this way's better, or your way's better, and you kind of, it's a give and take. So, you know, I think a lot of people get concerned about their vision that, oh my God, I'm going to lose it because someone's going to take it away. And, you know, there's going to be a lot of push and pull with a lot of very powerful egos on any show. You have to decide which egos are trying to destroy your show and which ones are actually trying to help you. Because most people, I've had very positive experiences with everybody almost on shows, and you've got to find the good allies and work well with them. And anyone that's trying to destroy your show, you have to kind of figure out how to deal with that. But yeah, I don't know. Does that... Yeah, I get passionate about Dungeons and Dragons and Mysticons. I mean, that's the one thing I get really passionate about. So I was pretty, you know, rock solid on those ideas. But you know, Matt and all the team at Nelvana all had great ideas too. So, you know, people will bring stuff that will surprise you, and that's really fun too. And then, you know, we didn't talk I don't think we talked about this at all, but like the voice actors, you know, for me as a writer, you know, we wrote the first 7 episodes of Mysticons before we started recording, and you know, for me, I like to go to the voice records because then you start hearing people, you know, making these characters come to life. And I wish I could go back now and rewrite the pilot and the first 7 episodes, but you can't because you're already finished. But they would be much stronger having heard the voices and the voice work that the actors did. So that's another level of creativity that it's this big thing that it just keeps growing. So that's a bit of a sidebar. But yeah, I think you just have to be very collaborative and stay true to your show and fight for your show. I think it's hard when you're first starting out. If you're lucky enough to get a show right out of the gates, you might not have the courage to say no, but saying no to some stuff is important too. Yeah.
I guess it comes down a little bit to, I find it comes down a little bit to how, I mean, you will kind of always want to collaborate once you get this thing going. Once you get at a period where, at a point where you're making a show that's your own show, you kind of want to have you're enjoying the collaboration with people because you spent so much time with it by yourself. And then you want to collaborate. On the other hand, there is like Lee and I have worked on shows before where the vision of the show was someone else's vision. And so we do everything we can to make their vision a reality. And I think that's what people want to do. They want to know that there is a vision, and then it funnels what everyone is doing. And so you're not really concerned about having power so much as it is making sure you're conveying the sense of what the show is to everybody who's working on the show. And going back to what these guys were saying before, it used to be there was a much bigger division between the writing and the production on the show. And so that created a lot of dilemmas, I think, because you would get to a point where all these scripts were approved to go into production, and then the writers and story editors and who were involved in that vision were no longer even working on it. And so a new person was coming in, and they had their own vision of what the show should be. And so changes would happen because there was no collaboration throughout the entire process. Now that we've got these more of a creator-driven approach to shows with 1 or 2 or 3 people. It could be the director, it could be the creator, it could be a head writer, it could be a producer even, who has the vision of the show. As long as that they are where everything is being filtered, then it's a pleasant collaboration for everybody, I think. You don't need the power. You may want the power. You don't need it.
To add to that a little bit, I guess, the question was like, how much power do you have? And it's something like, bottom line is like, as a creator, show is being produced by a big production company and big networks, et cetera, et cetera. Bottom line is like in reality, you would have no power because they own the show. The best power move you could do is just like, oh, I quit. But that sort of thing, like, but this kind of power you're talking about is something that's earned because it's a conversation. So you can't, like, it's not a dictatorship. You're not going to stomp your foot and say like, oh, I want it like this because I want it like this. You're going to explain why you want it like this. You're going to explain why it's important for the show and why it makes sense. And hopefully, if you're working with people who love the show and who love your vision and who want to make the show succeed, they will listen to you and they'll compromise a little bit and you compromise a little bit. And sometimes there are changes which are kind of inevitable for some reason or another. And your job as a creator and as the showrunner or head writer or whatever is trying to reshape the show in a way that you still love it and then you still retain the things that you love about the show. And then you fall in love with a completely new idea that wasn't there before. But, from my experience, most of the times makes the show better. So it's engaging with the producers, engaging with the company, engaging with everyone who's working on the show, and explaining why you're making the decisions you're making. Sometimes like I was recently we had legal we had to take out some rocks from the background because they look like penises, and it's the kind of thing that makes me really upset because I find nonsensical. But you gotta pick your battles. Like, yeah, you're not gonna die on this. You're not gonna die on this penis-shaped hill. So that's not important for the vision of the show. So make that.
I think too, just being open-minded. Like I know, like with the Amigonauts used to be, there's like 3 boys, and it was suggested when YTV came along to make one of them a girl. And at first, it wasn't really in my head to do that. And then when I started to think about it, I couldn't understand why I didn't think about it, and it turned out to be one of my favorite characters. And I think you just gotta always be open-minded. You don't have to be a doormat and constantly be stepped on and not getting your say, but definitely keep an open mind, even if you don't agree with it at first. But then if the idea, like everyone's been saying, if it's not true to your idea, well then explain to them why it doesn't. And I found, even when it wasn't my own show, when I was working on other people's shows, directing or boarding, if you pitch your idea and there's a reason behind your thinking, and it makes sense, a lot of times people will see where you're coming from and they might go that way. But just always keep an open mind. No one wants to work with an asshole, I guess, too. Like, you don't want to constantly just turn everything down. But that also doesn't mean you have to say yes to everything either.
Yeah, that's all true. Barney, do we have more time? One more question? One more? I think Mac had one. Yeah.
In the meantime, what's one life lesson you learned working on each one of these projects?
Is that a question to me? Kyle, how's it going, amigo, bro? So my question to all of you is, the more time you've worked on a production, have you found that you've gotten increasingly comfortable working parts of yourself and your personal experiences into characters and into stories? Or have you found that over time these things sort of start to take on a life of their own and you feel like you just have to let it be out there and just kind of let it grow and see where it goes?
Yeah, I think it starts with your vision, and then but like I said, with the voice work, like that for me is that point where it's like it feels weird, but I know that the show is starting to, and the characters are becoming real to me, and that's when like it's weird, but like they always, it's not like you're hearing voices in your head, but you are guided by these other characters because you'll start to really like when I was doing Mysticons, like we switched all the boys to all girls, and I had to find those characters and figure out who they were. And we did as a team, but then literally when the actors started speaking, I don't know if it's just the voice or what it is, but like it's the embodiment of the words on the page and then made into something physical, sound, and it just clicks. Like, and then I'm like, okay, I know the characters now, and I guess that goes for live action too, because I've worked on some live action stuff too. And once you see the actors performing at the table reads, you're like, oh my god, that joke's like they said it in a way that I never imagined it could be said, and it's funnier, way funnier. So they start to make these things real, and you know, we make the blueprint as writers, but like then it becomes real, and I think then you start to get guided by that reality. Same with designs. Like I see design work. Like while we were in the Mysticons room, we would get like Matt with his team would send stuff all the time, and we'd look at it and go, oh my god, that's amazing. In fact, one of the artists did like some really great Sky Pirates, and then that fed a whole like thread of Sky Pirates, and it was really awesome. Like so yeah, it's a feedback loop. Like it just feeds each other and it grows, and yeah, you get guided by your characters and the art. It's really fun.
How does it feel when everybody? I just have a question now. I'm taking control now. I was wondering, how does it feel when like it goes from just you, and then all of a sudden like writers are weighing in and like changing it? Does it feel weird, or does it feel good, or is it like, what's that like?
No, that's weird. You were in the room with me. No, it's exciting. I like that part. As a creator, it becomes a matter of, and I think our director Matt said it. It's like your big job is, I think, as a director, and even as a like story editor, it's like making the right decisions, because you guys, like, people will hit you with like a million ideas like every minute. And you kind of have to go, oh, good one, work on that one, shelf that one, but find the good ones and say yes to the good ones. And so I like it. It's confusing and crazy, and sometimes like it seems like I'm not listening, but I am. There's pressure, but no, I like the room. The pressure is for me is like the pitching, but being in the room and hearing ideas. Like I love when people come up with great ideas. It's like good. Because like most of the time as writers, you're in your own room and just in your own head. But the room for me is exciting because you go in and you have like an office job for like 3 weeks. I have to look good and dress up, and yeah. But it's people come up with great ideas, and that's the fun part. So.
Anyone have anything to add?
Yeah, I can ask.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, was that Mac first?
Yeah. Woody.
Yes, it was Mac.
Yeah,
that was Mac.
Woody? Yeah. Hey, Mac. I just want to say, just to answer the question, that it was really cool. I just want to say that when you see somebody else drawing your own drawing, I thought that was amazing. When like something you've been sketching for a while, and then all of a sudden other people are drawing it, and then you've seen it animate. That's a pretty unreal moment when that happens.
I was going to say that, so we're three of us who do Wishfart, and there are a couple of episodes like early on in the scripting that I didn't really get. Like we all worked on together. Yeah, that I just didn't really get, and I didn't like. I just sort of kept my mouth shut a little bit. I was like, okay, I don't really understand where this is. I understand it's going to be a script. I see where it's going. I'm helping make it a better script, and then it went into production, and the reason I didn't really get it is because it wasn't the type of story that I would normally tell myself. And so, going to Mac's question and your question both, it's like I wasn't really, I wasn't like getting it because it wasn't my like a type of story that works in my head. But then it goes through the gauntlet of production and the writing and the voicing, and it ends up being done after the mix. And I'm like, I watching these episodes, and I'm like, oh, now I get it. It's a really good story. It like taught me something I didn't know before about myself. So it does take its own life on. Yeah.
And Pedro, I think it's interesting. We've been talking about voice actors, and I think the actors on Cupcake and Dino have they get to improv a lot, right?
Yeah. The big benefit of tapping into Toronto's like incredible comedy scene is that these guys, a lot of these actors, they've worked with each other on stage. They know each other for years, so they're very comfortable with each other. And we don't even have scripts. They're like, oh, here people are gonna improvise, just kind of naturally improvise. During the scenes, it just makes the script so much better. It just brings everything to life, and it just makes it sound so natural. And there's so much of that improv that we've used in the show, and it just came spontaneously from the actors. And it's amazing. It's like every time I watch one of the recordings, like I'm laughing. I'm usually on Skype, but I'm always on Skype because I'm either in Toronto or in Brazil. In Vancouver or in Brazil. And I'm just like, I have to mute my mic because I'm laughing at the guys just riffing on the scripts. So it's we always try to encourage. Same thing with everything in production, like the board artists. So we have some amazing board artists, and we always encourage them to just add jokes, just like whatever you can think of, we want to put in there. We have something in the show that, like, most of the show is the backgrounds are hand drawn, but as you guys could see in the clip, we have small insertions of, usually it's royalty free video during the episodes, and we're always telling the board artists, like, find something weird. Like, you can go and, like, we have a contract with Shutterstock, and you can just go in there and, like, find some weird clips and put it in the show, and just if there's a place that there wasn't a joke before and now there's a joke, for us it's always like an amazing process to be surprised by those things. So like I always, every time we get a new episode animated, like the first time I watch it, I like to watch it just like I was just an audience member, just watching on TV. And I think we always say that to everyone who works in the show, is that do something that you would like to watch, because if you're just doing something that that you wouldn't watch, that you wouldn't subscribe to, like it just comes off as cynical and cold. So just do something that you would love to see. It needs to be appropriate for kids, sure, but so no penis rock. But
that's great. Barney, are we done, or one more? We're done.
Maybe one more.
Maybe one more. Yeah.
Maybe that guy.
That guy, John.
So many of you talked about the process of development from greenlight development to production, and so far the average timeline seems to be a century or 6-7 years. What I want to know, and I'm sure a lot of people in the room who are young creators, how the hell did you keep yourself motivated doing this show for 6 years to get to the point where it is? Especially, for me, it's like every new idea that pops up that I want to work in. How did you keep yourself devoted to continuing this process?
I think in a lot of ways, I mean, we were all, I'm sure, doing lots of other things in that time frame, and actually, for me personally, it was always something that kept me going, as opposed to something that I felt that I needed to do, because I didn't really believe it would ever really happen. So I was doing it because I wanted to be doing it, and amongst other jobs, most of which were like great experiences, but at the same time, they didn't really feel like ours. So I think the only thing that gets you through is just you really want to keep going back to that thing and playing with it and changing it and tinkering with it. And it's kind of like designing some sort of dream house that you don't really think is going to happen, but you're always going to go, like, at the end of a hard week, you might be like, hey, but I still have that and I still love that thing. So, but it's really freaking long time. Yeah. It's I think more the moral, like, your kind of energy for it. Sometimes you feel like, oh, what's the point? But I never felt like I don't want to be doing this. So it's.
And if it goes on that long, other people are liking it too at certain stages. So it kind of like
you're getting some
false hope as you go along constantly.
But you have like peaks of like excitement and then depression.
I think knowing too that it's a process, and it's tough. It's going to be a roller coaster. And I think if you want to be a creator, you want to have your own show, it's going to be tough. It's going to be a roller coaster, and that's just, it's part of it, I think, going into it. And because when production starts, it's going to be an even crazier roller coaster. So I think development, it almost like prepares you for what you're about to go into. Because it's going to be an even wilder ride, 2 years or 3 years or whatever it is that it's going to take you to make production. But yeah, just know that it's part of the process.
Yep. If you can't get through those first few years, you can't get through production. Because yeah, and those years I feel they're important because the show really matures over those years, and it's not like you're looking at it every single day, anyways. You know, you get to look at it every once in a while. So every time you look at it, you look with sort of fresh eyes and a little bit of a different perspective, and that helps the show mature a lot. Like you recognize, oh, it's not working, you change things, and you know, if you can't take the notes, then yeah, production is going to be miserable for you.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, try not to put all your eggs in one basket too. Like, try not to just focus on that one show. Like Leanne was saying, like keep busy with other things, like working on other people's projects, and then also be creating other shows too. You know, it's important not to, so that way also then you're not getting too precious about the one show and too attached, and you're keeping yourself flexible because it's going to change as it goes, as with each phase and all the different notes you get. So yeah, I do think it's really important not to put your eggs in one basket.
And now I have to come up with something to say. You handed me the mic. No, but I think, what can I say? You know, yeah, we all juggle a lot of things on the side, but I will say with Mysticons, one of the refreshing things of that was that, like, the boys version, there was a long development period of like a green light, no green light, you're almost there, not there anymore. It's like you're riding that that crazy wave, but. And we did a great show, but then when the girl show happened, the development process from like re-envisioning the show into a girl show to like production was maybe 3 months. Like we just were ripping through it, and it was so fast that I was like, it was super refreshing because you can overdevelop something, and that's, everybody can be guilty of that, from writers to networks to producers, and it's like you can really micromanage and overdevelop a show, and that's at that stage. But with Mysticons, we were moving really fast. I mean, we did have 4 years of like, we sort of had a pretty good idea, but like the new version of the show just went really quick, and it was nice because it never happens.
Cool. So we're gonna wrap this bad boy up, but I want to just thank you guys for coming tonight and sharing with everybody, but also for all your hard work and vision on these shows that I've enjoyed watching for the last couple of years. So yeah, it's all just for me. Yeah. Thank you.
I'll just second that as well. Thank you so much for putting together this panel. Thank you, Sean and Leanne and Dan and Steph and Kyle and Pedro, for everybody for making time for this. This is amazing. If you like this and you want to continue this conversation, go on the live stream that Graydon put up and comment on it. And maybe one of these guys will take a look and comment back on it. As well, on behalf of TAAFI, we'd like to thank Corus, our founding sponsor. Thank you, Helen and Judy and Oscar, for helping put this on today. Give them a round of applause, everyone. Thank you as well to Staffy, and thanks for all you folks coming out. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thanks, Pedro.
Yeah, I hope there's a bathroom open in the building. There's one like across the doors. Awesome. Guys to the right.
That was great. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, thanks so much for having us. You guys are off the